we couldn't figure out something with the car seat. And I was like, if we can't figure this out, how are we going to keep a human alive?
It's hard.
What is going on?
It's hard though. I'm with you. I remember the first time I took Rhea out trying to open up the stroller. How does this thing open? I could not figure it out for the life of me. I think I YouTubed it. How do you open? I could not figure it out. It was so bad. All right, so today I'm joined by Nicolette, who is a mama friend I met through Instagram, and she has a very unique story and perspective that I can't wait to share with all of you. She and her husband have 2 kids, ages 11 and almost 2. She lives in North Virginia, and prior to having her second child, Alec, she was a labor and delivery nurse at one of the large hospitals there, and this is actually where she ended up giving birth herself. During her birth, Nicolette ended up suffering a life-threatening and rare birth complication that resulted in a near miss for both her and her son, and had an extreme amount of birth trauma with it as well. She has since returned to work at the same hospital where she delivered, continuing to be a labor and delivery nurse and helping others deliver their babies, even in the same room where she experienced this great trauma. So on today's episode, we'll be discussing her I had no idea moments throughout pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just wanted to give a quick heads up. For this episode only with Nicolette, the sound was a little bit messed up in the beginning, but bear with us. We did finally figure it out. So I hope you enjoy it. All right, Nicolette, thanks for coming on. It's been so nice getting to know you over the last, year and a half or so?
Yeah. Just about. Yeah, because I remember you just came across my feed on Instagram, and your reels were like so funny and relatable, and I was like, I'm just gonna follow this girl.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and I think we connected pretty early where I sent you a message asking like, hey, do you want to have a story to share? And you're like, yeah.
Do I?
Right.
Yeah, and then you also told me about the Golden Hour podcast, which I was also on. So
yes,
yeah.
They're awesome. I love that. They also sent a little, when I did the listener question box, they said, love you both. Have a good recording.
I love that. I love that.
I know. They're so awesome. I've loved following your journey, getting to know you as well, and can't wait to share with our listeners your story. So starting with Meena, how did you find out you were pregnant? What were you feeling, thinking, all the things?
So I actually was pregnant before Meena, and I lost that pregnancy.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise,
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Actually, that baby's due date was on the 20th of this
month.
Really?
Really?
Like it just passed. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So otherwise, I wouldn't have known really what was going on, but I had peed twice in 15 minutes, and I was like, I'm pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just a very stressful situation. My mother had a heart attack, so she was in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And I was looking after my quadruplet siblings, younger siblings. And
what?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have quadruplet younger siblings.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my word.
They're 24 right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So me and Serge were, taking care of them, and we just had stress sex on the couch, and then literally it was 2 weeks later my mom got discharged. We were sitting on the couch, and I looked at her and I was like, I think I'm pregnant. She's like, you do? And I was like, yes. But I waited because it was still so early. I hadn't even missed a period, but I just knew from the previous pregnancy, what I was feeling.
Right.
So then I got an invite to my older sister's birthday party, and I was like, I'm going to come, but I'm probably not going to be drinking. I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant. I'm waiting to take the test until Friday. She's like, don't take it. And I was like, no, I'm going to take it. So I was actually at work, and I went to the store on my lunch break, and I bought a test, and it took forever to result because I only trust the digitals.
Okay.
Yeah, and it took forever to result, and it said pregnant, and I was like, I knew it. And my period was due in 7 days, so I find out really early when I'm pregnant.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's how I found out. Thanks, Mom, for having a heart attack, because I would not have had that couch sex that resulted in my daughter Meena.
Okay, so what was your favorite part of that pregnancy?
Oh, I loved like every second of it. I really enjoy being pregnant. I have very easy pregnancies. And since it was like my first pregnancy to term, just like my body changes. I loved my belly so much. Like I loved watching it grow. I loved feeling her inside of me. But I was super nervous about losing her. So, but otherwise it was a dream pregnancy.
Good.
So I'm super grateful for that experience.
And
Mhm.
then because you were a labor and delivery nurse at that time too, right?
No, I
No.
wasn't.
Okay. When did that
Yeah.
happen?
So, when my daughter was 6 months old, I was nursing her and just looking down at her and thinking about like how far we've come in our breastfeeding journey because it was really hard in the beginning.
Okay.
And it was almost like I had this calling to nursing because I never had any desire to be in healthcare or like anything like that. And I just had this like thought that was like, why don't you become a nurse? And I was like, what? That's crazy. I was already in school to get certified in medical billing and coding because my thought process was like I could work in the field for a year and then I could work from home and I can stay home with Meena. But like as I started getting closer to graduation and started going on interviews, I was like, I really don't want to do this. Like it sounds pretty miserable, like and I'm
Yeah.
like, what purpose am I serving people than like calling them and like you need to pay that? Like I just
Yeah.
didn't like at first I was like, oh that's great. I'm gonna be home with Meena because it's Meena, Meena, Meena. But like purposefully it held no significance to me. And once I heard that voice that I should become a nurse, I was like, I need to go do that because Meena was like that driving force behind it. So I started taking my prerequisites for nursing school while I was still in school for billing coding. So I was like, I'm going to finish that, and I graduated that. Was doing my classes, and I just 4 years, and I finished nursing school. But
Oh,
like
wow. Okay.
specifically went to nursing school to be a labor and delivery nurse at the hospital that I work at now. Like that was my goal. Like I'm working at that hospital. I'm going to be a labor and delivery nurse and did
That's
it.
awesome. Yeah. Then with her birth, had you like super prepared for it? What was your kind of experience with that?
I watched a lot of videos on like natural childbirth because I was like, maybe I'll try that.
Yeah.
No.
No.
and then because like I watched my sister give birth to two of her kids, and
Okay.
one was very like I was waiting like for my nephew. I was like waiting for all that like stuff you see on TV, like the screen. And it was a very because it was baby number two for her. So like she got there, and then like half an hour later she had her baby, and it was like nothing. And I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
wow, right? Maybe that's how it's gonna be for me. And then she had my niece, and that was the one where I was like, I'm not having kids after watching this because it was number three. And I always say this about third babies, they can go either way. They're either gonna come out or they're not. Like they're either
Oh,
stubborn or they're gonna fly. You're gonna walk in carrying your baby, like
yeah.
because they fly out. So my niece came so fast. She got her epidural and it didn't work because she was progressing so quickly. It just
Mm.
wasn't catching up. And she essentially had a natural,
Oh,
unplanned,
wow.
natural, involuntary natural childbirth. And I was like, oh, I remember standing there like my legs crossed and I was like, oh my God, like I never want
Oh,
kids, I never want kids, I never want kids. And then I was pregnant for Meena. I was like watching her birth video over and over and over, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do it. I can't do it. So I was like, I'm totally getting an epidural. So then I started watching videos on epidurals, and I was like, I'm not going
hmm.
to be able to get an epidural. I'm not going to be. It's too scary. I can't do this. And Serge literally had to like shut the computer and take it away from me. And she's like, whatever, like whatever. Just don't even watch this stuff. Don't, because you're like making yourself stressed out, giving yourself so much
Hmm.
anxiety. Just stop. So I was like, okay. And I just really didn't. I mean, I read like a book on breastfeeding, but didn't really prepare for it. I went in knowing nothing. I had no expectations. I had no birth plan. I just was like, my birth plan is to like cry when I see my baby because I
Yeah.
didn't want something to not go to that plan and then be like devastated, which is like
Right.
great because it's kind of what I tell my patients now, like leave room for changes,
Right.
you know? So yeah, I just kind of went in thinking like I'm going to have a baby and it's going to be so crazy because I'm going to finally meet this thing that's been growing inside
Yeah.
of me. So
Right. Yeah, so
no,
how did the
no problem.
birth go?
It went really well. She was a week late, so they evicted her.
Okay. Yeah.
Like as much as I loved being pregnant, she loved being in there. I was worried because I had met a girl. We had the same due date, and she wound up going into labor before me. And then her daughter had meconium aspiration, so she had to like
Oh,
go to the NICU. And like I was like, oh my god, like oh no, I
yeah.
don't even want that to happen. That's crazy. Like not bonding with your baby, like, and I'm like, great, I'm a week late, so this might actually happen to me.
Mm.
So I got induced. It started on a Sunday night, 2012, such a long time ago. I feel like I barely remember it. I feel like as soon as my daughter was born, I forgot a lot of things. Like there's a
Mm.
lot of things that I just don't remember, like as they were happening.
Were you showing signs of labor at that point, or it was just
No,
nothing?
I wasn't feeling anything.
Yeah.
There were some issues with Meena, like having late decel. So basically, like I would contract and then her heart rate would drop. And it was like every
Oh,
time I got up to go to the bathroom. So they were kind of like, don't get up and go to the bathroom anymore. I was like,
I have to
no,
pee.
I'm going to get up and go to the bathroom.
Right.
So, morning came, my mom came, my sister came, my best friend came. I was that annoying person with like 100 people in my room at the time. So they started my Pitocin at some point in the morning and it was fine. My mom's like, you're contracting. Do you feel that? And I'm like, no, I mean, I feel like tightening, but I don't feel
Yeah.
like anything. So I was like, I'm going to see how long I could go with this. Maybe I'll have a
Yeah.
natural, who knows? And then my doctor came and she broke my water. That just
Uh,
like set off everything. I was screaming. I look back at videos of me and I laugh so hard because I'm like, oh my god, it was bad. It was bad, bad, bad. I'm like, those pit contractions are just woo,
that's what I've heard. I've heard that they're
woo.
like real intense.
And
Oof.
apparently my body like responded very quickly to it. Because like I was contracting like every minute.
Oh
So
my
at some
gosh.
point I remember I was like, epidural right now. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I have this on video because when they checked me and she broke my water, she said I was 2 centimeters. But I
Oh,
was
okay.
like, when I look back at the videos, I'm like, I was not 2 centimeters. Like,
Really?
I must have progressed so quickly because the way I was acting, if I was at work, I'd be like, somebody set a table for me. Like, you
Yeah.
can blow this baby out. Because I kept looking down. Like, I just felt like part of me was falling off. And like, I have it on video because when I came in, they started getting me ready for the epidural, and my mom was like, "Isn't it too early to get her epidural? Like she's only 2 centimeters." And I was like, "Mom!" Then the anesthesiologist came, who actually happens to be the anesthesiologist that I work with, and who also was the anesthesiologist for me for Alex's delivery. So that was like nice and full circle. He gave me my epidural, and I didn't feel nothing. I was like
Yeah.
high as a kite, laughing. My room was so fun. Like after that, and I didn't feel like any pain, but I could still feel tightening. So
Mhm.
that helped when it came time to pushing. Like maybe 3 or 4 hours after I got my epidural, I was ready to push. So that's how I know I was more than 2 centimeters when
Oh, yeah.
after she broke my water. I pushed for about an hour and a half, and then she was born. I needed to get an episiotomy because she came down. Like nobody did spinning babies on me. Like they put me on one
Mm.
side, and then like my leg went dead, and they
Oh.
flipped me to the other side because she was decelling or whatever, but like
Uh,
no one gave me a peanut ball. No one, I don't think it was such like a big thing back then, 11 years
yeah.
ago. So she came down like kind of sideways. So her capit was like
Oh,
over here. And I was like pushing really well, but it's just the way her head was. It just couldn't get out. So as soon as she cut, she was like, bloop. It was her little face and she was screaming already. And protocol back then, I guess, was for, NICU comes to the room for meconium. Not anymore, but they did. And I was worried because the meconium, I'm like, oh my God, what if
Oh.
she swallowed it? They're going to bring her to the NICU, whatever that means,
Mhm.
because like I had no idea. And they put her on my chest, and I didn't really get delayed cord clamping.
Mm.
They took her, but now that wouldn't happen. Like she was screaming. Like clearly
Oh,
she didn't
yeah.
aspirate anything.
Sure.
She's screaming she was screaming before she fully came out.
Right.
So they put her on, Serge cut the cord, and they took her. Like I barely had a chance to like get my hand out from under my leg to touch her, and then she was gone. And they like cleaned her up and everything. She didn't have meconium aspiration, thankfully, and they weighed her and all that stuff, and then they brought her over to me. And that's when I like don't really remember anything past that. I'm like, I had her. I remember we were taking pictures with her. I don't remember like transferring. I don't remember getting fundal checks. I'm like, did they even do fundal with
Okay.
me? Like looking back, I'm like, I don't remember ever getting rubbed every 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And then I don't remember the move over to the new stretcher or the ride up to
Mm.
postpartum. Like, I just don't remember it. It's like gone.
Yeah.
Because I just was staring at her, like, oh my God, how was she inside of here? This is
Yeah.
crazy. Like that first baby stuff. You're like, this is insane. It's like human.
Yeah.
So, yeah, other than didn't really know much about like the golden hour and skin to skin and all that stuff. So it didn't bother me then that like they took her right away, or like I didn't do skin to skin with her in the labor room. I just was holding her wrapped up, which is like something that I totally would do now, knowing
Right.
what I know, and nobody was like, yeah, do skin to skin with her. I just was like holding her. At the time, it was perfect. It was beautiful. It wasn't until like later looking back, I was like, damn, I didn't really get that. That stinks, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. She was healthy. I was healthy. It was an easy, normal, uncomplicated delivery. And like, you can't really ask for much more,
Yeah. Was there anything
So,
that you wish you had known like beforehand?
oh yeah, I wish I would have known how much that was going to hurt, because I would have got my epidural before they broke my water.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. That was so painful. And I guess I wish I had known about like positioning and stuff like that, because I mean my labor went quickly, so I can't complain about that. But at least it would have made her come down into like an easier. It would have made her come down better into a better position, and the pushing I probably would have pushed for a less amount of time. But for a first time mom, hour and a half is really good.
Yeah.
It's usually 2 hours upward for a prime ep. So yeah.
If you're enjoying this episode so far, please take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you get more episodes like this in the future. So, with postpartum, what was your experience like with that for her?
So, first mistake, we didn't bring the car seat into the room. So when we were being discharged, they were like, "Where's your car seat?" And we're like, "In the car." Oh my God. And they were just like, "Oh, it's okay. We'll just, you can carry the baby down in your arms on the wheelchair." And then like we couldn't figure out something with the car seat. And I was like, if we can't figure this out, how are we going to keep a human alive?
It's hard.
What is going on right now? Like,
it's hard though. I'm with you. I remember the first time I took Rhea out, and I was like, all right, it's my first time. I was alone, and I'm like trying to open up the stroller, and I'm like, how does this thing open? Like, I could not figure it out for the life of me. I think I YouTubed it. How do you open? I could not figure it out. It was so
That's
bad.
how you know. But I feel like they're like these high-tech strollers now that like one hand this, one hand that. And I'm like, I had a big old clunky Graco for Meena. So like, it wasn't really difficult, but there was something about this car seat that we just couldn't figure it out. And then, obviously the drive home, we're like driving really slow, like, for whatever reason. Postpartum wasn't bad. Obviously, that first like week home, you're like, what is life right now?
Yeah.
Right. I remember one time I like woke up to change Mina's diaper, and I dropped the diaper cream on the floor, and I just started crying. I was like, I can't even do this without messing it up. I can't, like refund. I'm like, can't do this. But she was like a really easy baby, just like, oh my God, a dream. The breastfeeding was like I wanted to do it so bad. And that's why I stuck with it. But it was like, nobody told me how hard it is. It was just
Yeah.
like, oh, I tried it. I didn't like it. And that's it. Even my OB at the time was like, there were two OBs, and the one who was telling me I didn't particularly like. And thankfully, she didn't deliver my daughter, because she was like, Meena is going to be 9 pounds, so you're going to have a C-section. I'm like, okay, well, I'm Puerto Rican and Jewish, so I got childbearing hips, you know, and I was 9'8", so I think I'll be fine. You know what I mean? I remember she had asked me, like, how do you plan on feeding your baby? And I was like, oh, I'm gonna breastfeed. And she was like, okay, you say that like it's easy. And I was like, okay, well then shouldn't you like give me resources so that I'm successful? I was like, what the hell, you know? So, whatever. So I read whatever book, but it was very like dated, I felt like. And I just was, and you could read a book, but real life is so different, and everybody's bodies are so different. Like I did
totally.
not have good breastfeeding nipples, which I didn't
Yeah.
know was a thing 11 years ago. You know, my boobs are ginormous and my nipples are teeny tiny, flat, inverted. Like it was hard. Like I had no idea how hard it was going to be. And just that, like, I guess because I had so many people thinking that I wasn't going to be able to do it, I was like extra stubborn to like do it, you know? And so like that first week, when I looked back at it, I'm like, oh my God, those first 3 months breastfeeding were so painful, it was so hard, but it was 1 week. It was only 1 week, but it felt like 3 months.
Yeah.
So I had went to the doctor, and like my nipples were cracked and bleeding, and like I was miserable, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And they were like, take her off and just exclusively pump for a week. And I was like, okay. So I started doing that, and like, you know, totally fine. But then my supply started to like drop dramatically, and it didn't matter what I was doing, what I was drinking, what I was eating, holding her, sniffing her, like while I was pumping, it just wasn't working. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to put her back on. And I was terrified, because that pain, it's like your nipples are like glass is like splitting them open.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't do this. And I remember I was at the doctor's office, and they were like, did you put it back on? And I was like, nope. And they're like, why don't you try right now? And I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. And they were like, just do it. And I was like, so, and she was like fussy, so she was hungry, and I went and I put her on, and I was like waiting for that pain, you know, like she would get on and I'd be like, oh, it hurts so much. So she went on, and there was like nothing, there was no pain. And I was like, what?
Oh, wow.
What? And they're like, you just needed your nipples to heal and take a break. Cause it's like, you know, whatever, when you're doing the grown up and you're messing around and you're doing stuff, you know, sure, there's some nipple play, but there's not like, they don't get that kind of love. You know what I mean? I tell my patients, like, they're like, how am I going to know when she's latched? And I'm like, you'll know, because it feels like your soul is being sucked out through your nipple.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And I'm like, but really?
But really, yeah.
So, but then after that, it was just easy peasy lemon squeezy. We breastfed exclusively until she started eating solids, but she still was nursing from the source, because she did not like defrosted breast milk, because she, you know, was a princess. And I was like, wow, that's great. So straight breastfeeding for 15 months. She weaned herself. I mean, it was like a dream. And then you're like, I should have another.
Yeah.
That was easy. Trick from the universe.
Right. Yeah, what's that story with, like, obviously there's an age gap between your two. So what's that story?
So I didn't want any more. I was like very happy and content with Meena, and you know, she was my whole world. I mean, she's still my whole world, but like she started growing up, and it was like, I can't imagine doing that all over again. Like,
Yeah.
ugh.
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling.
Right. We would flirt around with the idea, and then we're like, oh no, she's potty trained. That was a nightmare, you know? So like, no, forget it. Like, she's totally fine being an only child. She has so many cousins. Like, it's cool. And then she started school, and she came home one day, and she was like, I want to be a big sister.
Aw.
And I was like, that's it. I was like, aw. That's so good for you. Anyway, and then I was in nursing school, and then she kept asking me, like, am I going to be a big sister? And I'm like, you know what, Meena? We really love you, and you're such a big girl now. And I think that we're really happy with just you. What? She started crying, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening right now?
Oh my gosh.
And then and another time she came to me and she said, you know what? I know when I'm going to be a big sister. And I was like, really, when? And she goes, when I'm 9 years old. And I'm like, okay, Meena. Because she got this best friend, Addison, when she was in kindergarten. And her sister was 9, her older sister.
Oh, okay.
So I guess she figured, you're 9 years old, you become a big sister. Yeah. Lo and behold, she wasn't wrong. She was 9 years old when she became a big sister, which is wild that she said that. And then that actually happened. It was not planned at all. So I finished nursing school. I became a labor and delivery nurse, was working, and it just was really weird. One night I was sitting there and I was like, I need to have another baby. I will regret it for the rest of my life if I don't have another baby. And I was setting up the talk to Serge because we, now Meena's 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. And this is really new parent territory again, it's been so long. But I was like, Meena was so easy. So the next baby will be just as easy. It's coming from the same parents, has a loving older sister. Blah, blah, blah. I was preparing this conversation with Serge, thinking that I was going to get shot down. Mm-hmm. So I'm I got all the wraparounds. If he says no, I'm like, no, but come on, because, whatever. So he comes home from work one day and I'm like, hey. So I was thinking, and I told him, I said, listen, I was at work and I just had this feeling if I fast forward my life and I was on my deathbed, what would be my biggest regret in my whole entire life? Because I don't have hardly any regrets on my life. And it would be not having another baby. Mm-hmm. So I got ready to fight. Yeah. And I was like, I think we should have another baby. And he had already said yes. And I just kept going on with why I thought we should have another baby. And then I realized that he said yes. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh. And I started crying. And he's like, why are you crying? I was like, because I thought you were going to say no. So then it was I got to get off my pill. And, I want to be at least 6 months off my pill and all this stuff. But I wound up just getting pregnant very quickly. Mm-hmm. So there was no, my period was really weird when I got off the pill. And I was like, I'm never going to get pregnant with my period being like this. And I have endometriosis. And so I was 36 at the time. I'm like, and I am advanced maternal age. Yeah. I am geriatric.
Yeah.
So it may take a really long time for me to get pregnant. And, couch sex is where it's at because that's how
it happened for us too.
Meena and Alec couch sex. I don't know. And I just, when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, whoa, when did that happen?
Then you think back and you're like, oh.
I don't remember. I'm like, the only time that we did it was on the couch that night. And I feel like that was a while ago. Yep, that's when it was. I had no idea because we were in Puerto Rico and the symptoms I was having, I thought it was because I was hungover and tired. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm we're getting no sleep. I'm exhausted and I have to pee every 5 minutes because I'm drinking so much. And I actually had a dream the night that we were leaving. Mm-hmm. And this is another thing. I know people have intuition, but I had no idea how strong my intuition was. We were getting ready to leave for the airport and I fell asleep because Serge is a last minute packer and he was packing and he was making frozen meatballs. And I was like, what is that smell? And he was like, it's the frozen meatballs. I'm like, bleh, bleh. And he's like, what are you, pregnant? I'm like, you need to have sex to get pregnant. I don't. So, I wound up taking a nap while he was packing, but I was dreaming because I could hear everything going on. So it's like I was dreaming what was happening. Like I was dreaming that he was packing, I was laying on the bed, and that I was like, oh, I'm going to take this pregnancy test. And then I took it and it said I was pregnant. And I like woke up and I was like, we need to go to the store. And he's like, what? I'm like, I need to go buy a pregnancy test. And he's like, what? So we went and I bought the pregnancy test and I peed on it before we left, but like it was negative. But I actually think it was positive, and the line was like really faint, because when I came home and took the pregnancy test again, it was the same thing. And I ran out and I like went and I bought like 5 digital ones, because like I said, I don't trust the lines. I don't trust them. So yeah, I'm in Puerto Rico. I don't know I'm pregnant. I'm drinking. I'm jumping off of things. I fell down a whole flight of stairs drunk.
I saw that video the other day. That's so funny.
Oh, that's such a good video. Such a good time. I don't even know how I fell. I just went straight down.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
But it's like, you know, it tracks with my personality. And it's crazy because I remember that I was supposed to get my period while we were in Puerto Rico. And I was like, oh, I got to remember to pack stuff because it was going to be like the last few days we were there. And I didn't pack nothing. I just was like completely forgot.
Yeah.
So we got home and then Serge was like the next day, like, I'm going to go hiking with your brother, Greg. And I'm like, no, you're not. And he's like, yes, I am. I'm like, no, you're not. Then you're never going to unpack the suitcase and it's going to be sitting there for weeks. It's going to piss me off. And he's like, no, I'm going to do it. And I remember I felt rage, and I'm like, I get some crazy pregnancy rage. I felt rage. I was like, I was going to explode. I was like, I'm going to peel the skin off of his face. I'm so angry. And then he came home and he was too tired to unpack the suitcase. And I was
lost everything.
So angry. And then I felt like back pain, like lower back pain, like aching. And I was like, when am I getting my period? And I like looked and like 3 days were grayed out. And it was like, did you forget to mark your period? And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. So I like, you know, got all the tests and I found out we were pregnant for Alec. And I was like, oh my God. Like, this is what I wanted, but like also like I don't know that like we weren't even like trying, you know, and I know that's hard for some people to hear because, you know, infertility and stuff like that, but it happened. And I was very grateful that it happened so quickly, that we didn't have to try for months and months and months, because that's a heartbreak I just don't know, you know, and I am very sad for people that experience that and have a hard time getting pregnant. So anyway, it happened and I was all the way pregnant, and, you know, we were like, we want a boy, and Meena was like, I want a little brother. I'm like, it's 50-50 here. 50-50 chance. It's big odds, you know, so like
no control over it.
No control. We kept it from her. Everything was so different. Like, not like I wasn't sick.
Right. You said you had easy both, right?
Easy both, but things were just different. Like different things happened during my pregnancy with Alec that I was like, I didn't really think that was going to be a thing. So we didn't tell her until we hit the 12-week mark and we went for an ultrasound, and we told her and she was so happy. She was so excited, but she knew because she went into the fridge one day and she was like, Mama, how come you don't drink these anymore? And it was a White Claw. And I was like, how observant of you. Mama's been working and just, you know, I just haven't felt like it. And she goes, okay. And she puts it in and I'm like, crisis averted, right? So we tell her, she's excited. We're like, we don't know if it's a boy or girl yet. We're going to do a gender reveal, blah, blah, blah.
This concludes part 1 of 2 of Nicolette's I Had No Idea episode, but here is a sneak peek of what's coming up next time.
A few days later, I was at work and I just felt like really like wet. And I was like, oh, I must be like really sweaty. That's gross. And I went to the bathroom and I pulled my pants down and there was just like blood. And I was like, what the heck? It was a lot. Enough where I was like, my heart started pounding and I was like, something is not right. Like I might be losing this pregnancy.
All right, Nicolette, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm going to put all of your information down in the show notes where people can find you.
Awesome.
So, yay. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
Bye. All right, friends, if there was anything that resonated with you today, please go ahead and leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear about it. If you liked this episode, you're really going to like this one too. Check it out.